Fellas, lady fellas, Evan Society, welcome to the Fantasy and Reality Fantasy Football Podcast. I'm your host, Spencer Tacker. Today in the ridiculously overdecorated studio, we're going to be going over the best and worst performances of Week 5. So, we had a lot of really good performances, guys that went off, did fantastically for your team, some guys that kind of surprised you, but also guys that just absolutely did terribly, did not do well, just goosed it up for your team, and just made a mess. So we'll talk about a few of those guys, the best and worst performances. So for the first position, we're going to go with quarterback. So for the best quarterback performances of Week 5, we have at the top Deshaun Watson, who went 28 for 33 for 426 yards, 5 passing touchdowns, and 4 rushes for 47 yards. Monster day, massive. He needed that to come back, do really well because he was getting sacked so much. But on to the next guy, we had Matt Ryan, who went 32 for 46 for 330 yards, 3 passing touchdowns, 3 rushes for 7 yards, and a rushing touchdown. So getting it done in the air and on the ground. We had Russell Wilson, who's also a guy who likes to run a lot, but he went 17 for 23 for 268 passing yards, for 4 passing touchdowns, 8 rushes for 32 yards. We had Teddy Bridgewater, went 26 for 34, 314 passing yards, 4 passing touchdowns, and then 5 rushes for 7 yards. Fantastic day. Finally had his come out party as the starter of the Saints. So let's hope he can continue that. You might be able to get him as your waiver guy, someone to stream, because they're going to see some decent defenses. But if he can continue this, he's going to be fantastic. And then to round the top 5 for quarterback performances, we had Kyler Murray, who went 20 for 32, 253 yards, no passing touchdowns, but he had 10 rushes for 93 rushing yards and a rushing touchdown. So another guy getting it done in the air and on the ground, helping you out because the rushing yards are worth more than the passing yards. So he kind of bumped his score up a bit. And then other fantasy quarterbacks doing well: Tom Brady, Dak Prescott, Gardner Minshew, Kirk Cousins, Andy Dalton. And I say fantasy performances because Dak Prescott didn't do too well. He threw 3 picks, but he also threw a couple touchdowns, so it kind of boosted the score a bit. But onto the running backs, we had Aaron Jones, who had a phenomenal career day. He went 19 rushes, 107 yards, and 4 rushing touchdowns, 7 receptions, and 75 yards. So a career day, to say the least, for Aaron Jones. Next, we had Christian McCaffrey, who did similarly, but it's on the ridge for him. Just a normal day at the office for Christian McCaffrey. 19 rushes, 176 yards, 2 rushing touchdowns, 6 receptions, 61 yards, and a touchdown receiving. So, I mean, it's just Christian McCaffrey doing Christian McCaffrey things. Let's see if he keeps that up, because he's my running back MVP candidate for this season. So, cross fingers, hope I'm right. Next, we have Josh Jacobs, who had 26 rushes, 123 rushing yards, 2 touchdowns, and then again through the air, 3 receptions for 20 yards. A lot of these guys get a lot, especially in PPR leagues. They're killing it for you because they're getting almost double-digit receptions, doing really well, getting a lot of those receiving yards. Just like Dalvin Cook, who went 21, 132, no rushing touchdowns, but he did get 6 receptions for 86 receiving yards. So trying to get it done for you in multiple ways. Phillip Lindsay around the top 5. 15 rushes, 114 rushing yards, a rushing touchdown, 4 receptions for 33 yards. So other great fantasy running back performances. We had Leonard Fournette, Austin Eckler, Sony Michel, Chris Carson, and Todd Gurley. So not a terrible day for the running backs. The same guys who you thought were going to do well did. A couple guys kind of fell off. But for the most part, it was a decent day for the running backs. Next, for the receivers, Will Fuller absolutely killed it. Unfortunately, DeAndre Hopkins couldn't have a day like that. But it's fantasy. Happens all the time. Every single week, someone does well that you don't predict them to. Someone does terribly that you predict them to do really well. So it's just the name of the game. Will Fuller had 14 receptions for 217 yards and 3 receiving touchdowns. Amazing. Michael Thomas, 11 receptions, 182 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Amari Cooper, also 11 receptions, but he had a career high 226 receiving yards and 1 touchdown. DJ Chark coming in at 4 with 8 receptions, 164 yards, 2 touchdowns. Adam Thielen finally coming back around. Hopefully this continues. Him and Kirk Cousins getting that chemistry back together. But 7 receptions, 130 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Also, other receivers having a good fantasy week. We had Chris Godwin, Allen Robinson, Tyler Boyd, Cooper Kupp, and Julian Edelman. For the tight ends, this is a guy that you'll probably want to pick up. Spoiler, he's going to be in my waiver wire video at the tight end position. We had Gerald Everett, who is becoming more and more of a threat every single week, especially in PPR leagues. He had 7 receptions for 136 yards. No touchdowns, but in PPR leagues it helps you out a lot because those 7 receptions really help out, especially 136 yards. Doing fantastic. It's kind of making the receivers in LA be not as valuable, but if you can do anything to the tight end position in LA, it'll help. That way you get somebody in that position on that team that'll benefit your actual team. So next we have Zach Ertz, who went 5 for 57 and a touchdown. Darren Fells, who had not a great day, but I mean, he made every single catch count. He had 2 receptions, 20 yards, 2 touchdowns. So I mean, 1 reception for 10 yards and a touchdown twice. Doing really well with what he has. So next we have Jared Cook finally have a decent day. He went 4 for 41 and a touchdown. I mean, not the greatest, but at least he's showing potential. Finally kind of doing what he was supposed to do when he first got to New Orleans. And we have Mr. Consistent, Austin Hooper, still in top 5. 6 receptions, 56 yards, no touchdowns, but I mean, in PPR, like I said, getting it done for you. He's still one of the top couple of targets for Matt Ryan. So if Matt Ryan does well, Austin Hooper's going to kill it. Other tight ends having really good week 5s. We have Will Disley, Ryan Izzo, Travis Kelce, Evan Ingram, and Mark Andrews. So with all of these really good performances, you know we have to have some really bad ones. Some guys that either goosed or just had terrible games. Tried to start out well and got injured, things like that. You want to start out hot and then you get knocked in the head, get a concussion, things like that. Stuff happens, but some guys that had really terrible weeks were Luke Falk, Phillip Rivers, Colt McCoy, Derek Carr, Joe Flacco, Marcus Mariota, Mason Rudolph, Aaron Rodgers, Wayne Gallman, Adrian Peterson, LaShawn McCoy, Jalen Samuels, Ronald Jones, Melvin Gordon, Nyheim Hines, Royce Freeman, Chris Thompson, Frank Gore, Peyton Barber, Miles Sanders, David Montgomery, Tariq Cohen, James Conner, Joe Mixon, Carlos Hyde, Jordan Howard, Mike Evans, Goosted, DeAndre Hopkins, Philip Dorsett, Emmanuel Sanders, Trey Quinn, Robbie Anderson, Nelson Aguilar, Zach Pascal, Chris Conley, Golden Taint, A.J. Brown, Corey Davis, Geronimo Allison, Cole Beasley, Keenan Allen, Demarcus Robinson, Brandon Cooks, Julio, Stephon Diggs. Guys that you really want to do well are just not. But Curtis Samuel, T.Y. Hilton, Deontay Johnson, Terry McLaurin, James Washington, Randall Cobb, Willie Snead, Sterling Shepard, Robert Woods, Kiki QT, Josh Gordon, Greg Olsen, Blake Jarwin, Kyle Rudolph, Virgil Green, Noah Fant, Eric Ebron, Delaney Walker, O.J. Howard, Dallas Goedert, Matt Lacoste, Dawson Knox, Tyler Eifert, Charles Clay, Trey Burton, Jack Doyle, Jason Witten, and Vance Dance McDonald, just to name a few guys. So we had, as I said, a really good week for guys like Deshaun Watson, Will Fuller, absolutely killing the game. But we also had guys like DeAndre Hopkins, Julio, Mike Evans, just performing very poorly, even goosing it up. In the case of Mike Evans, don't freak out because he was going against Marshawn Lattimore, who basically shut him down the entire game. He was on him like at least 80% of the time. in that game. So Marshawn Lattimore, not a bad guy. So he blanketed Mike Evans. So don't freak out, as I said, because there will be matchups where he goes against a tough corner like that. There'll also be matchups from a couple weeks ago that Mike Evans goes absolutely off. So the New Orleans defense is really fantastic so far. And I mean, that kind of reflects on Winston's performance, especially with Mike Evans. But Chris Godwin did well. He had a garbage time touchdown. So things like that will happen. Don't freak out. Julio is going to bounce back. Keenan Allen will also bounce back. So don't let this deter you from freaking out, things like that about guys who aren't performing well, making ridiculous trades. Don't try to trade a top tier guy for someone who's doing well right now, because that probably won't be consistent and you'll be giving up way too much for that right now win. Whenever in the future, the rest of your season could be fantastic if you keep that top tier guy. So those were the best and worst performances of week 5 so far. We still have the Monday night game. Hopefully Nick Chubb can kill the game. OBJ does decently well, but not too well to beat me. But let me know who assisted you in your wins this week, who killed you and just left you in the dust. Let me know down in the comment section below. I'll talk to you about what guys did well for me, what guys absolutely killed me, whether it was Mike Evans goosing it or going against Phillip Lindsay, who did well against me, benching Aaron Jones, things like that. We're all human, we make mistakes, but let me know mistakes you made down in the comment section below as well. But as always, thank you for tuning in and thank you for your support. Leave all questions, topic suggestions, comments, feedback down in the comment section below. We'll get to any and all questions that you have, answer them as in-depthly, as accurately as possible. Remember that sports is supposed to be enjoyed together, so please tell someone about us, watch together, and like I said, leave comments and things like that. We'll get to them. And we want to grow our community as much as possible. And in order to do that, you gotta smash that thumbs up, hit the subscribe button, so keep trying to give you as much content as possible. But lastly, we'll leave you with God bless America and God bless fantasy football. Take care.